Hey, y'all, each week on The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, we ask big questions and share hot takes about the pop culture we love.
Now that we have YouTube, we don't need any more biopics. If they've been alive such that I can watch them on YouTube, I don't need it.
I don't think that music is getting worse. I think y'all just don't listen to artists who aren't in the mainstream.
Taylor Swift, retire. It's time to retire.
The Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube.
When I got the opportunity to be on Sesame Street, I said, I'm going to be what I should have seen as a little girl.
This is Life in 7 Songs from the San Francisco Standard. I'm Sophie Behrman. My guest this week is Sonia Manzano, a.k.a. Maria from Sesame Street, a role she held for 44 years. She also wrote for the beloved children's show, earning her 15 Emmys. Sonia is the author of a novel, children's books, and a memoir. She's also the creator and executive producer of the animated series Alma's Way on PBS Kids, whose main character, Little Alma, is inspired by Sonia's own life. Sonia Manzano, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
So I have to tell you, while preparing for this interview, I referred to you as Maria multiple times. So did our producers. I can't imagine we're the first to do that, though.
No, actually, people still call me Maria, and I respond to it as if they were saying Sonia, because Maria's personality and my personality are sort of one personality, and I can't say that I ever played a character on Sesame Street. I really was myself on purpose, and I always say that Maria was a slightly better version of Sonia.
I mean, your life really did mirror Maria's, or Maria's mirrored yours in some, real ways. When you became pregnant, so did Maria. What were some of those moments where your lives were in sync?
Well, Sesame Street did a remarkable thing in that it allowed the actors to age. Usually on any television show, at that time, if the ingenue became older, they would just fire her and hire a younger person to take over the role of that particular ingenue. But Sesame Street thought that the show should reflect life, and in life, people get older and they go through life changes. So it was with Maria. Certainly, they didn't know the show was going to last over 50 years, but I reflected society when feminism was in the air in the late 60s. Maria was a feminist and got a job as a construction worker and would get annoyed when Oscar called her a little lady. And then when I grew up and fell in love with my real husband, Richard Reagan, they thought that maybe incorporate that into the storyline, because I wanted to have a baby, and they said, well, this is a good way of explaining it if it's in Sesame Street storyline. So I became very good friends with Emilio Delgado, who played my husband, and so many times people really thought that I was married to him. One woman stopped us at an event, and she was so thrilled that we would show real love on Sesame Street, and when we told her we weren't really married, she sucked in her breath and said, well, as long as you really love each other. So she was determined to believe we were a couple.
Hilarious. Well, let's talk about your first song, El Número 6 by Ruben Blades, performed by Bobby Rodriguez. So you were listening to this as a kid?
Well, that is certainly one of my most favorite songs and reflected my kind of coming of age or being a tween in the Bronx. Before Ruben Blades, a lot of Latin songs, vocal arrangements were almost like an instrument. And the songs, the lyrics didn't have real stories. But Ruben Blades put an actual story to the number 6 train, an icon in my life. I took the number 6 train to go to high school and to go to the beach, and I learned how to read on the number 6 train. And it's about a man singing about wanting the train to come so he could get to his beloved.
Apúrate, maquinista, que hace tiempo estoy esperando el número 6. El número 6. El número 6.
It's a very New Yorican experience that I really appreciated. And it's always refreshing to hear something that actually exists in your life. It makes you feel seen and noticed.
So let's talk about that. You were born and raised in the South Bronx, and your parents came from Puerto Rico. Tell me about your upbringing a little bit.
Well, it was tumultuous. It was, sadly, my household was ruled by domestic violence. So there was a lot of drama going on all of the time. And they struggled, certainly. My parents came right after World War II. At the invitation of the mainland, factory owners would go to Puerto Rico with flyers. And they'd say, come to the mainland and we have work for you. And they did. I mean, they made everything in New York, hats, buttons, dresses, everything. And so they were part of that early migration. My mother's older brother came first and then sent for her. And they would pore over the dictionary and learn words that had to do with their work. So my uncle would learn words that had to do with auto repair. And my mother would learn words that had to do with the garment district, sewing, thread, bobbin. She would learn what those words were in English and found her way. They certainly had a hard time of it. We lived at a time when Latin people were absolutely invisible. We weren't in the newspapers or on television, and you wondered what you were going to contribute to a society that was blind to you. It was unbelievable.
You chose a song, Lamento Boricano, by Rafael Hernandez. How come?
That was, as you mentioned, I was born on the mainland and raised in the Bronx. And I didn't go to Puerto Rico till I was like 14. So I didn't know the island that they talked about so much. And this song kind of gave me a glimpse into their life, a glimpse into the life that they left behind. Every Friday, my uncles and my father and my mother had a beautiful voice, and they'd sing it. And it's about a jíbaro, which is a peasant, and how he one day has his harvest of plantains or whatever it is, and he's joyous, and he's going to come down into town, and he's going to sell his harvest, and he's going to buy his woman a beautiful dress. And then, sadly, things go wrong. He doesn't sell what he expected to sell.
Y triste, el jibarito va pensando así, diciendo así, llorando así por el camino. Que serán de Borinquen, mi Dios, que engreído.
That song, the lyrics and the music was haunting to me as a little kid, and it made poor people noble. It's how will I support my family? How will I take care of my home? It's all very dramatic, and I think kids, or I loved dramatic, sad things when I was a little girl.
Really? How come?
I don't know. And I actually just recently I was reading the book review section of the New York Times, and in the back of it there was a story about another person who loved The Little Match Girl, Hans Christian Andersen story, and how in the winter this poor little girl is selling matches and she's freezing and she dies, and she goes up to her grandmother, who's also dead, who's the only person who loved her. And I loved that story. I loved to hear it over and over again when I was a kid. And I think that nowadays people are afraid to say anything that's sad to children. And I think it empowers them, though. It makes them feel like part of the human existence. And it's a story, so it's separate from them. So it's not like you're saying, let's all have a party because Uncle so-and-so died, or you should like it, but it's just distant enough for you to feel empathy. And I firmly believe it empowers children to be able to handle those stories. And that's why I love the Little Match Girl and this Lamento Borinqueño.
You mentioned a little bit coming from a home that was tumultuous. What exactly was going on?
Well, I guess my father drank, and he worked out his anxiety and anger by assaulting my mother every now and again. So police would come, and there would be orders of protection, and then we'd move. Every time I was like just mastering double dutch on one block or mastering kick the can, we'd move. Oh no, I'd have to start all over again to make new friends. So there was a lot of disruption, but I firmly believe that music did put me on a higher ground. As I had a cousin in a similar situation. I mean, we all knew about each other's lives. And every time the family was in an uproar or we were moving, he'd take out his bass and start playing. And I'd say, how can you play music at a time like this? And he'd say, this is exactly the time when I'm supposed to play music. I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now.
And you also chose a song, When You Wish Upon a Star by Cliff Edwards, that soothed you.
Yes, television was a comfort. I loved television, all kinds of television. It was the Walt Disney show. And Jiminy Cricket at the end of that show would sing, when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. And to me, it was so hopeful. It meant to me that anything was possible, that I could probably get out of this environment and do like Jiminy Cricket says.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you.
I mean, come on, what kid doesn't, in a difficult situation, wouldn't cling on to that song and find it soothing? But that's the feeling that Jiminy Cricket's When You Wish Upon a Star gave me, that there was hope and there was a future.
So you're around 10 or 11, and it sounds like maybe your parents weren't the best example of what love looks like, which leads us to your next song, Please, Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes.
Yes, I mean, you look to these songs for guidance because there were no real good role models around me. I had some older cousins, and they would have girlfriends, and the girlfriends would have these huge, like, Ronettes hairdos. You know, they would hug their bodies as they sang, you know, is there a letter for me? I've been standing here waiting, Mr. Postman.
So patiently, for just a card, for just a letter, say he needs returning home to me, please Mr. Postman. Oh yeah.
I used to watch these teen girls, their frosted lips with white lipstick and their painted nails, and you know, it's kind of thinking, oh, is that what love is? Is that the love that I'm going to grow up to feel for somebody? It kind of gave me kind of inklings as to the romantic life I was going to look forward to.
Oh, at that time, what did you know? Like, what were your expectations about love?
I mean, they would say things like, if somebody got pregnant who weren't married, they wouldn't tell me that sex caused pregnancy. They would say that somebody did them wrong. Or they'd say, well, God sent her the baby. And I say, well, couldn't God see that they weren't married? Why did he send the baby? Couldn't he see they weren't married yet? So they gave you as little information as possible. And, you know, if a woman worked, it was frowned upon. It's a very macho society. My mother was one of the few who kind of navigated both worlds. She was the first woman I knew to drive. She worked in a factory, and none of the other women worked in a factory. So she was kind of being free and independent and not by her marital situation. And then there were, you know, wayward women. So That was the other way you could be. So there weren't very many role models until the feminist movement that we started to negotiate and see a third way to be.
After a short break, Sonia gets her first glimpse of what she could be. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, I want to recommend a podcast. Hard Knocks is a show about resilience, self-discovery, and finding meaning after chaos, hosted by Amanda Knox. Each week, Amanda sits down with fascinating guests, writers, thinkers, artists, to explore how we learn, grow, and rebuild ourselves after life knocks us down. Amanda brings humor, honesty, and hard-earned perspective to every conversation, drawing on her own experience of being wrongfully convicted and rebuilding her life. Amanda was a guest on Life in 7 Songs in one of our most moving episodes, opening up about how music became a lifeline during her years of wrongful imprisonment. On our show, she spoke candidly about turning pain into wisdom and also about how we're all so much more than our worst moments. If you liked that episode, you'll love her show, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Jesse Alejandro Cottrell.
And I'm Emily Dreyfus, and this is Pacific Standard Time.
We have stories from all over the state of California, all the big battles that are happening here.
Prop 50,
housing affordability,
tech,
and immigration.
And we're really excited to bring you the stories about how California is dealing with what it means to be alive in 2025.
Subscribe to Pacific Standard Time, a new weekly show from the San Francisco Standard.
We'll have new episodes every Wednesday starting November 19th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Sonia, you began your acting career in high school, right? Was that also part of your refuge?
Yes. First, a teacher took me to see the original West Side Story, which was really a remarkable thing to me. And it was because I saw everyday things in my neighborhood made beautiful. Like a fire hydrant was beautiful. The fire escape was beautiful. I mean, I saw these things every day, but they didn't look beautiful. So, and I realized that maybe that's what art was, to take a banal thing and exalt it. I said, I could do something like that, perhaps. And then in junior high school, a teacher suggested I go to the High School of Performing Arts, which I had never heard of. I was ready to go to the neighborhood school. But I always tell teachers today, you don't have to take the kid the whole way. You just have to point them in a certain direction and they'll go. In junior high school was, I was brilliant in every way. Great student, A student in the Bronx, because so little was expected of me. All I had to do was show up and not make any waves, and I got passing grades all the time. But when I got into the High School of Performing Arts, I was competing with kids who had been to excellent elementary schools or excellent middle schools. And I met up with the education gap that Sesame Street was trying to close. I really experienced it. It was all I could do to maintain a C average. I didn't know the difference between a debate and a fight. I didn't know how to pass a test except to memorize information. And these people were expecting more.
And just for the listener who may not know about the high school you went to, this is the school that the musical Fame is based off, of course, right? And everyone there is acting and dancing. So you chose a song, I Wish I Knew How It Feels to Be Free, by Nina Simone. Where does this one fit into your story?
Yes, Vinette Carroll was a well-known director. She directed Your Arms Too Short, To Box with God, and she had a couple of other Broadway shows, and she was a teacher. And there was money from the government for the Urban Arts Corps, it was called. And she was the head of it. And she asked me and some other kids from PA, and then she knew some other people from the other aspects of her life to be part of the Urban Arts Corps. And we went through the cities and we visited schools and we would bring art to them. And Robert Chapman was her pianist that taught all of us that wonderful song.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things.
Isn't that just lovely?
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So, how did you end up going to college in Pittsburgh?
Well, I wasn't recommended to audition for any colleges, but I did have a job at a group called ANTA, American National Theater Association. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a secretarial job, and those women there gave me a recommendation to Carnegie Mellon University, and without telling the guidance counselor at Performing Arts, I auditioned on my own and got in.
On full scholarship, right?
Yes. I mean, it was so reasonable to go to college in those days, and society was on my side. It was a gentler America.
Another song you chose is Bang Bang by the Joe Cuba Sextet. Where does this song bring us in your life?
Well, at that time, I want to say it was like the mid-'60s. And the Latin music that I listened to was mostly Cuban mambos. And then Castro took over and all of that music stopped coming. I mean, that's what Puerto Ricans listened to, was a lot of that music. That music stopped coming, those artists stopped coming, and it was old school kind of music, but we still loved it. And then these new kids, this new group of Puerto Ricans, came up with this new sound, which was like a mixture of the old mambos and salsas and Wait a Minute, Mr. Postman and new and R&B. It was Latin, but it had lyrics like chitlins and cornbread and what was that about, in a Latin song. And it was a real explosion of Latin culture and African-American culture. And it was in English, which was easier for me to embrace. I always think of Cuban music as being more soothing and a lot of violins and Caribbean. And this was like the train. It's like bang, bang. It's like noisy and raucous. And I think it really captured our imagination. We were like the cool kids listening to Bang Bang and doing the boogaloo, which was whatever you wanted to do.
You said that this one spoke to you balancing on a sort of bicultural tightrope. What was the tightrope looking like in your own life?
I think at that time it was kind of, you either go one way or the other. The whole thing was work and get out of your neighborhood. Work and forget everything that you've come from and become something else. That was kind of the thrust. Nobody said, go get an education, work, and come back to your neighborhood and contribute to it. It was leave it and go someplace else. So that's the tightrope that you were walking, so that when you hear a song like Bang Bang, and it has elements of both, it's very Nuyorican and it's a relief.
Within a year of moving back to New York, you joined Sesame Street. When did you first become aware of the show, though?
I saw it in 1969. I was at Carnegie Mellon University, and I walked into the student union, and there on a black and white television was a very young, very bald James Earl Jones reciting the alphabet in a really deliberate manner, and it was so weird. I thought it was a show about lip reading or something like that. It was absolutely bizarre. And then when they cut to the street and I saw Susan and Gordon, this African-American couple, they're cute and cheerful, from what was known as the inner city at that time, it blew my mind because they were like me. And I had said, even though I loved television so much, I never saw anybody who looked like me or lived in a place that I lived in. And so to see Black people on television was a big thing in 1969. You simply did not see it. And if you did, you would call your neighbors, whoa, there's a Black guy on TV, quick. Really. And so seeing them made quite an impression on me. And then all of those wacky animations with wonderful singing, the Wanda the Witch was exciting. It was a perfect storm. Sesame Street was a perfect storm of the times, the 60s, the civil rights movement, the Muppets, and Joe Raposo's musical talent, and it was an explosion. It'll never happen again.
And you joined production in 1971. When did you start actually writing for the show? How did that happen?
Well, that happened in the 80s. Of course, they had Hispanic culture, because I was to do for the Latin audience what Susan and Gordon did for the African American audience. And so they certainly had a curriculum that was culture-based, Latin-based. And I always questioned them because they seemed not as exciting as the other segments of the show. For example, here you go from Cookie Monster eating a table to me talking about how hola is the Spanish way to say hello. Which is more interesting? I bet Cookie Monster eating the table is going to be more interesting. So I would bring that up, and the producer, Dulcie Singer, said, okay, well, I have a great idea. Why don't you try writing some of those bits yourself? So she really told me to put my money where my mouth was, and I started writing. I mean, I knew the show, I knew the characters, and I wrote some bits. But before that, just let me say this for any young people that might be listening. We would have meetings, and they'd say, what do you think? And I'd say, I think I should do this. And they would take me up on my suggestions. That's when I knew my ideas were valid. And that's how it starts. It's kind of shoot your idea up the flagpole and see if anybody salutes it or anybody likes it. Then you know if you can contribute to a particular organization, and that's how it started with me.
You became one of the first Latinas on national television, really reshaping representation in the media. What were some of the best and hardest parts of that?
I don't think that one sets out to represent anybody. Mm-hmm. I think that you just find yourself in a situation and people are a little bit lining up behind you. And that's when you see what your position is. And I always remembered myself as a kid watching hours and hours of television and never seeing anybody who looked like me. And when I got the opportunity to be on Sesame Street, I remembered that little girl. And I said, I'm gonna be what I should have seen as a little girl. And so I wanted to be natural. I wanted to be real. I wanted to be sincere. I didn't want to put on an act. And they didn't want me to either, so it worked out perfectly. And I think that, sincerity goes a long way, and not trying to be someone that you're not, and absolutely being yourself. They used to put a lot of makeup on me when I first got on the show, because it was mostly soap opera makeup artists at that time. They didn't really know how to do makeup for dark-skinned people that well, I think. And so I looked a little bit too perfect. Mm-hmm. And John Stone, the producer, came in one day and he grabbed me. He was very angry. He dragged me into the makeup room and he said, I go through all the trouble of hiring a real person and you make her look like a Cupid doll. Well, the makeup artist got very nervous and started taking the makeup off me. But I understood then what they wanted, and I understood what I should do. I should be myself on purpose. Mm-hmm. People see me as a representative, but that's because the more sincere you are, the more people see themselves in you. I've had blonde, blue-eyed people come up to me and say, oh, you're just like me.
Well, In 2015, it was announced that you would be retiring from Sesame Street after 44 years, which brings us to your last song, Sing, written by Joe Raposo. Tell me about this song.
I just think it's like the most beautiful all-purpose song. It works on so many levels, which is what Sesame Street did. It worked on a lot of emotional levels at once. It's simple, it's yearning, it's hopeful. We'd add lyrics as we wanted. There's a lyric that goes, "Sing of how things can be, sing for you and for me." It's so simple.
Sing a song, make it simple to last your whole life long. Don't worry that it's not good enough for anyone else to hear.
The lyrics are so poignant, even though it is for children. It's emotional. I mean, hearing that song.
Right. It's emotional. And what's beautiful about it is you imbue it with whatever your life experience happens to be, whether you're 4 or 24 or 54. You see it no matter what your age is. And that's the beauty part.
How do you hear it today, Sonia?
It still tugs my heart. I've heard it so many times, and it still makes me smile, and it makes me hopeful and yearning, just like when you wish upon a star. You have to have hope to keep on going.
I think it's worth noting that we're speaking with you within days or weeks of the announcement about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting shutting down. You mentioned always having hope. What are your hopes for the future?
It's very hard to be hopeful these days. It's a very strange time we're living in, but you have to have hope. And I think James Baldwin said, in order to be alive, you have to have hope. And if he can say it, and whatever he went through at his time on the planet, I can certainly say it too.
Sonia, thank you so much for sharing your 7 songs. This was an absolute honor. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you very much, and nice talking to you.
Life in 7 Songs is a production from the San Francisco Standard. If you're listening and haven't subscribed to the show yet, please do. It makes a huge difference for us. Our senior producer is Jasmine Morris. Our producers are Michelle Lands, who also mixes the show, and Tessa Kramer. Our theme music is by Kate Davis and Zubin Hensler. Jess Hutchison created our show art. Our music consultant is Sarah Tembekshian. Executive producers are Griffin Gaffney, John Steinberg, and me. As always, you can find this guest's full playlist at sf.news/Spotify. I'm Sophie Behrman. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week.